So, Ms. Scurry, you testified that you have been a 911 dispatcher for approximately 7 years at this point. Is that correct? And I just kind of want to roughly go back over, you described sort of 4 areas that you do, correct?
Correct.
So as I understand it, the first area is there are days or shifts where you have, you may be the actual call taker. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so as a call taker, a citizen calls 911, you pick up the phone and respond to whatever that call for service is. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you'll type it into a system. That information will get sent over to a dispatcher, correct?
Correct.
And the dispatcher is the person who is in charge of communicating with and assigning officers to calls, correct?
Correct.
And there are days when you show up for work and you're assigned to be the dispatcher, correct?
Correct.
You also described a third part of your job is to be the fire dispatcher, which is separate from police.
Correct.
Now, in preparation for trial, I believe on March 2nd, you met with members of the prosecution team, correct?
Correct.
And you made a statement, apparently made a statement that police is more fluid than fire. What did you mean by that?
Correct. So when fire calls come in, let's start over. There are most generally not times where the fire department comes upon an issue. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen, where we can assign a rig that's come across someone who might be down on the ground or anything like that. But when a structure fire comes in, it's not because they were out driving around. It's because someone called, saw flames or smoke, whatever prompted them to call, and then we send the rigs to where they need to go.
Okay. So basically, whereas police, they may be driving around and they may just see 2 people fighting on the corner, stop and have to deal with it, right?
Correct.
And so dispatching to police officers is a different process than dispatching to fire.
You are correct.
All right, so we've got the call taker, the dispatcher, the fire dispatcher, and what was the 4th aspect again?
We call it our Channel 7. It's an information channel. We mainly use it for officers coming in for off duties.
Okay.
Or when someone reports a lost child, we have different computers that we use to make sure we can log them appropriately in our national database.
Okay. So the Channel 7 responsibilities may include, when you say off duties, those are police officers who are hired as security at local businesses, things of that nature?
Yes.
So even though the officer is not on duty as a Minneapolis police officer, a business hires them and they still act as a police officer, correct?
Correct.
Now, and then there are those other, the lost children, things of that nature.
Yes.
Right? You also described that the city of Minneapolis is comprised of 5 precincts, correct?
You are correct.
First precinct being downtown, is that correct?
Yes.
And downtown is broken into 2 sectors, correct?
Correct.
And then you have the 2nd precinct, which is the northeast, right?
Correct.
The 3rd precinct, which is the southeast, right? The 4th precinct, which is the North Minneapolis, northwest side of the city, right?
Correct.
And the 5th precinct, which is the southwest side of the city.
You are correct.
All right. And each of those 5 precincts, like the 1st precinct has 2 sectors. Mm-hmm. The 3rd precinct, you said, had 4 sectors, right?
Correct.
And so essentially, there would be 2 squad cars downtown, 4 in southeast Minneapolis, and that's the totality of the police force in those 2 parts of the city. I mean, as far as patrol.
Patrol. At certain times, it can be more. It depends on the shifts and when they're on.
So there may be an event or a concert, and they may bring in extra people, or something's going on where they would need extra officers?
Correct.
And oftentimes, there are fewer officers than are assigned sectors, correct?
There's usually always at least 1 squad per sector.
Okay. But those, like, officers call in sick or they go on training, and so the numbers of officers on the street at any time shifts from time to time.
Correct.
And it's fair to say that as a dispatcher, you're not a police officer, correct?
Correct.
You have not been through the police academy, through police training, things of that nature.
Correct.
But you don't know all of the police officers in the city of Minneapolis, right?
No.
Okay. Now, in terms of your previous testimony, you indicated that listening is a big part of your job.
Yes.
You said that the majority of your job is done by listening. Can you explain what you mean by that?
We are in a room with no windows. We work off of a phone and a radio the majority of our time. The other times would be only if we had some kind of video to show us, anything like that. Then other than that, we are always on a phone or radio.
Okay. Now, you said that there are 6 televisions, you believe, in the dispatch room. Is that right?
Throughout the whole center, there's 6 on the walls, 2 large ones on the ends, and then there's 1 in fire.
Okay. So
9 total.
9 total. Sorry, I had to do some quick math. And I'm just trying to get this set back up here, if I may have just a minute, Your Honor. There we go. Okay. Those televisions don't have the City of Minneapolis cameras up all the time, do they?
No, they do not.
Those televisions may have other information up. They may be off. I mean, they're not constantly on all the time.
They're always on, but you are correct. They're not always on cameras. We have other information that we put on those screens that we can have constantly running as reminders. We also have other screens that we utilize throughout the day too.
All right. And then in front of you, you have 4 or 5 different computer screens itself. It sounds like it's a very, moving job, right? Now, you testified that it's very rare that you actually see an incident that you've dispatched on these city cameras.
Correct.
Does it happen once a year? Is this the first time you remember it ever happening? How rare would you say it is?
I can't be specific, but there might be, in the whole time that I've been a dispatcher, maybe 3 to 4 calls that I've seen on our TVs.
Okay. And usually, correct me if I'm wrong, the reason that may be brought up is because there's something that triggers someone to operate that camera and put it up, right?
Correct.
So you don't control the cameras.
You are correct.
You don't have access to the cameras through any of the screens in front of you. Is
Correct.
that right? Someone else who maybe like a manager or a supervisor has to do that?
Correct.
All right. But this incident was specifically brought up on the cameras, right?
Yes.
All right. Now I got this all. You also were previously interviewed in connection with this case by Special Agent Brent Peterson. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was back on June 9th of 2020 at approximately 1 o'clock, right?
Yes.
And that was at the FBI field offices, or where was that?
It was over the phone. I was not in town.
Okay. So you had a phone interview with Agent Peterson, and I believe you had your union lawyer or something with you as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you, on May 25th, you were Channel 1 dispatch. That covers both the 2nd and 3rd precinct, correct?
Correct.
And there were, again, the 4 sectors of the 3rd precinct, Squad 310, Squad 320, Squad 330, and Squad 340, right? And you didn't necessarily know who the officers were assigned to those cars.
Correct.
Have you subsequently learned who the officers were who were assigned to those squad cars?
Yes.
So who was assigned to Squad 320?
Officer Lane, and I do not know how to correctly pronounce the other officer's last name. King.
All right. And Squad 330 was Officer Chauvin and Officer Top, correct?
Correct.
And the other cars did not come, right? Squad 310 or 340 were not on scene, right? And ultimately, 830, did you identify who Squad 830 was for the Park Police?
I didn't.
Okay. Now, when this call initially came in, you again were not the call taker this day. You were the dispatcher, right?
Correct.
And so the call taker comes in, takes the call, you see the information that the call taker puts into the computer system, correct?
Correct.
And it's fair to say that that information is also being seen in the squad cars of a Minneapolis squad car, right?
Correct.
So when the call taker types in this information, it's visible to the officers in the squad car.
Yes.
And it allows them to respond as well. You can respond. Lots of people can respond to various calls, right?
Correct.
All right. I am going to go back to, with the court's permission, I believe this was Exhibit 151, which was the computer-aided dispatch. Can you see that in front of you?
Yes.
All right. Let's see if I can get rid of some of this stuff here. All right. Okay, so the call initially comes in at 8:02 and 13 seconds, correct?
Correct.
And as you described, that the caller reported that outside the reporting party that there is a male provided a counterfeit bill to the business. Suspect is a black male, 600 plus, I mean 6 foot or higher.
Yes.
Okay. Sitting on top of a blue Mercedes-Benz ML320 with the particular license plate. And it also noted that it appears this person is under the influence, right?
Correct.
So at the time that the call came in, you would have seen that this person was suspected to be under the influence by the caller, right? As would the officers in their cars.
Correct.
And so you indicated that you had initially did you say you radio dispatched Squad 330 to this call?
Initially, yes.
Right. And that was because, and do you recall where they were at the time you dispatched them?
No.
Excuse me. Back in June 9th, when you spoke with Officer Peterson, or Agent Peterson of BCA, would you dispute me if I said you told him that they were at the precinct at the time of the call?
I would not dispute you.
Okay. And so at that time, you believe that Squad 320, which was the sector car, was tied up, but they had not cleared something from the computer? Is that right?
Right. They were still on the call that they had been working on.
So let's talk about when an officer finishes a call. Is there something that an officer is supposed to do to say, hey, I'm done with this call, I'm on to the next one?
It is, they can either clear over the radio with us, clear me, whichever reported by ascent, whatever, there's a multitude of things, or they can clear themselves. On my screen, I have a status screen that shows me when a car is clear, when a car is en route, when they're on scene, and when they're code 4.
Okay. And so on one of these screens that's right in front of you, you have some sort of representation of each of the sector cars that you're responsible for dispatching. So if, for example, you have a call in Sector 310, and 310 is already occupied with some other call, you can send 320 or 330 or 340, or even somebody from a different precinct or sector, correct?
From a different precinct, it requires more conversations with a sergeant to pull response cars. It's a policy of calling people and getting their permission to use their cars. But yes, if someone is busy and I don't have a 360 or whichever precinct 60 car to use, then I have to go to the closest available. Or if there's no one who's close and I only have one squad available, that's the person that has to go.
Okay. So when you are looking at your computer screen, do you see all of the precincts' cars and their availability, or do you only see the second and the third precinct?
I only see the second and the third.
Okay. Now, so you indicated that ultimately Squad 320 kind of took the call back, right?
Correct.
They said, hey, we're clear, we're going to go handle this call at the Cup Foods, right?
Correct.
And you're familiar with you said you were familiar with the 38th and Chicago intersection?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And does it get a fair number of police calls to that area?
That I don't have the statistics for.
Okay.
And I wouldn't be able to rattle off of a yes or a no.
Okay.
In the last year, yes. Before that, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Okay. Now, squad 30 was ultimately squad 320 was ultimately backed up with squad 830, the park police, and squad 330, Officer Chauvin's squad car, right?
Correct.
And again, do you recall why you backed these officers up?
Initially, I believe I heard a loud something in the background. I would have to be reminded of what exactly I heard, but it was loud. And so until they were code 4, I started a squad to back them. Okay.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't just hear what an officer is doing at any given time, listen in on their calls, right?
No, they have to radio us to let us know what's going on.
All right. So when an officer pushes his button on his radio, or however they do it, it opens up the air or the microphone, so to speak. And that's what you're talking about. You're trained to listen, right?
Correct.
And when you spoke with Agent Peterson, do you recall telling him that you heard lots of yelling and things of that nature at one point when Squad 320 said they were taking one out?
I don't remember specifically. I believe I told him that because that was the reason why I asked for assistance.
Right. Squad 320 didn't call in and say, hey, we need help. You heard something that was concerning to you and you sent help.
Correct. And then when they said they were taking one out, had they said that first, I would have also started it then.
Right. And so Squad 830 was the first to respond?
Yes.
And I believe that they responded, let's see, at 8:10 and 38 seconds, right?
These actions right here, the one with my numbers where it says backed up with 320, or 320 with 330 and 330 with 830, that is me using my tools at dispatch to just back them up. I don't see the arrival times on here.
Okay. So this, you see here, 525 at 20:12:21, 320 C4. That's code 4.
Correct.
Meaning all clear, right?
To my understanding, yes.
And then 830 out with 320 at 20:12:55. So roughly 40 seconds or 34 seconds later, Squad 320, or excuse me, Squad 830 is out with 320.
Correct.
Right? And then there was an inquiry to get some information, right? And ultimately, then, at 8:20 and 11 seconds, there was a code 2 call for a mouth injury, right?
Correct.
Meaning, code 2 again, meaning just come in the matter of due course. No need to rush.
Routine, yes.
Routine, right. And then at 20:21:35, so again, about a minute and 24 seconds later, Squad 330 EMS code 3.
Correct.
So someone assigned to Squad 320, either Officer Chauvin or Tao, called EMS and stepped them up to code 3.
Squad 330.
Squad 330, right. Which would be Officer Chauvin or Officer Tao.
Correct.
All right. And they, code 3 means get here as quickly as you possibly can, right?
Correct.
Lights and sirens.
Correct. Sorry.
Now this particular document, Exhibit 151, does not have the arrival times, correct?
Not printed on it, no.
All right. Are you familiar with other documents or other printouts that would show various arrival times?
Yes.
And it would show other people who are associated with the case? Like what time, like who is assigned to which particular squad car?
Yes.
Okay. If I may have just a minute, if we could take this down, Your Honor.